Shall we play a game?
We got one person online. The workload is enough for like 10 users. I think we got a hacker.
Shall we play a game?
What are they doing to him? Breaking into his mind. It's like hacking a computer. All it takes is time.
Red alert! All hands to battle stations.
Hello, friend.
Welcome to Red Spy 365.
Shall we play a game?
So hello and welcome to another great version of Red Spy 365 podcast. I said I would do one this week and I'm doing one this week. Now I'm doing it something slightly different as well because I'm going to make it so that it's visual. It's got some visuals in it, but I know some of you just listen to it on podcasts, so I'm going to sort of explain it as I go through, because this is more a bouncing board off people. Like I said, one of the things I've done is I'm creating a steering committee, and we're going to start bringing up an industry advisory board. We want to expand, the input. We know you've got you guys. You guys give me great input. If you're not giving me input, realize that everybody else has given me input, and you really should be giving me input. We're doing our best to. We just upgraded 13.3.2, which was a huge upgrade for us. It may not seem it, but obviously we've introduced the metrics, we've introduced the new UI on the user side of things. We've done a lot with the web application side of things now, so we've streamlined the processes there, made everything so much more, I think, easier, not just for the analyst but also for the client that's involved. The platform itself, the Red Spy platform, or the Red Spy client portal, is becoming pretty awesome. It does exactly what I want it to do. 13.4 is going to finalize that part for me. So that's kind of where the platform will sit. And what we're going to be introducing in 13.4 is a couple of new concepts. And I just want to go over those new concepts, but I also want to start talking about the current state of play. If you look out there, you've got bug bounty, sort of platforms. You've got the crowdsourced platform, and what I'm going to introduce is a combination of both of those and some. So it's going to be kind of like a combination of both of those things with the ability to do lots of different things, and we'll go through that in a second. But we're going to be able to do the crowdsourced, bug bounty. You're going to be able to have this continuous testing, analyst-driven, scenario-based attacks, which is holistic across the entire board. And I'm going to talk about the limitations that is out there right now and how we're going to blow that away, because I think it's exciting. So one of the things I've always said is that, how do we score Red Spy? And that's important to understand, because, we look at return on security investment. We would look at, significant events. For me, the most value I can give a client is by identifying the change in risk at the earliest possible opportunity. Now in 13.3.2, we're introducing something even more exciting, because we may be able to even predict, based upon intelligence chatter with like Intel 471, exactly, what's going on. Maybe there's if you see I always imagine, you see the barbarians building in the tree forest from the castle, you may be expecting an attack. And that's kind of what intelligence is. If you're just looking 2 foot beyond your walls, you're really not going to be seeing really what's going on. You got to look way beyond, have those watchtowers. The higher the watchtowers are, the further you can see. And really, the one thing that Intel 471 does for me is it increases the distance that we can view things. And it moves what I consider, a target area, which is, the earliest opportunity for a vulnerability that appears, and we notify you of it. It moves it to potential, hey, something is happening. There's something building up. Maybe there's some chatter on the underground. Maybe someone's talking about, a piece of intelligence or a piece of software that you guys use. Maybe someone's talking about an industry. Either way, it's starting to move that time closer and closer to, patient zero, or that zero hour. And, if we can move it beyond that, if we can say, hey, look, we might have a dynamic, and I always talk about this, people have probably heard me before, I talk about current security postures or some current security policies. They're very static. We turn around and say, can we ban USB drives? No, there's a business use for them. Okay, we can't ban them, and that's it. That's the way it works. I don't believe that's, how it should be. If we look at the military, they have DEFCON 1 through 5. Maybe at DEFCON 5, not everybody's sitting in an aeroplane ready to take off. Maybe at DEFCON 1 that you can do that. And it's the same with our security posture. If we have, if we're sitting there and we know there's some intelligence building that maybe there's a particular attack, then we might be able to change the security policy based upon these perceived events that may occur. They may not occur, but for say, a couple of weeks, you might be able to ban USB drives. If I said to you there's some intelligence that, hey, people are dropping USB drives outside your organization, you would probably say, well, we need to ban them until maybe that sort of goes away, and then we can relax it. You have to address the risks as they appear. You can't just say, well, this is my static posture, or this is my security policy, and that is the Hadrian's Wall, that is the Maginot Line of security. Doesn't work like that. And this is where I think that the Intel 471 comes in. And that was the 1332. We're going to add this as an add-in, and you'll see how exciting that is. It's going to be 2 tiers, tier 1, tier 2, but we'll go into that more, especially on the seminar coming up. So that's kind of like really exciting, I think. It does definitely move this target area. But, I have this thing about the crowdsourcing and how we can build these scenarios. And I'll talk about that in a second. But really, there's two types, I think, out there. And I've talked about, I have two guys. There's the security researchers. There's the guys that, have a talent. I don't care what age they are. They have a specialty skill set. They might love building tools, security tools. And, and I'll read the slide because you can't, if you're listening to us on a podcast, you won't be able to read it. But I always talk about the Georges. They're smart, dedicated. They love to create security tools, exploits, and all things security. This is his or her content. He or she prefers to create tools to break into things. It's his or her passion, and they have a talent for it. That to me is, the guys that we want. I said, unfortunately for George, there isn't a big legit market for his tools. And we've seen this. We've seen where, people build tools and they get arrested because they start selling it to the wrong people. They're trying to earn money. Sometimes these tools, get in the wrong hands. There's all kinds of different areas. But I've always said the current crowdsourcing model doesn't pay very well or address his content build skill set in a way that enables him to spend in time wisely. And I'll talk about, why I think the crowdsourcing and the bug bounty programs aren't really that effective right now. Frankly, I say here, it's like free for all, basically just sign up everyone. Everybody's got a free for all, and George feels like he's just wasting his time. A lot of times we're seeing, bug bounty or crowdsourcing is against static external systems or a web application or a specific. And the problem there is that, the company that's saying, hey, we need the test, that they are known to the people, the testers, obviously the trusted, tried and testers, but they're not taking into account, really the real world, the remote admin Trojan, the remote admin tool, the piece of malware that someone creates that's sent via a phish program. It's not holistic at all. It's just, hey, we want this tested. Can you test it? And it's very much the same, with the bug, the bug bounty kind of thing. It's like, hey, we have this particular application. We want you to test it. And that's fine, but that's not holistic. It doesn't take into account the number one attack vector, phishing. It doesn't allow people to think outside the box. In other words, it doesn't allow people to create a scenario-driven event. Not just, hey, we want you to, test this web application. Yeah, I can test the web application. Your code might be great. But guess what? Phil, the web application developer, opens every single email going, and I've got a phish here, and I've found the local database on his desktop. That's the problem. It's very confined. It doesn't do what I think it says on the tin for a pen test, which is, to try and gain access to an organization. I also say there's a Boris. So we've got George. George is the good guy. We have a Boris. He isn't as smart as George in coding. Obviously, sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But he has no problem using George's tools, tactics, or procedures to break into companies and steal information or destroy systems. That's the bad guy. That's I would say, the bad guy. And the problem we have is there's a lot of Georgies providing a lot of content to lots of Borises. So George provides all this content to Borises, and Borises just use it. And we've seen time and time again where there's a fantastic piece of, malware, or there's a fantastic remote admin tool, or there's a fantastic technique, great new fish technique. He's hosted it all over the place. There's a great different scenario that he's created. And then when he hands it off to Boris, Boris is dumb as a rock and kind of, misuses it. Maybe he's calling stupid processes. He's calling like cmd.exe or something dumb. They don't understand it, but they are a large hammer, and to them, to the the Borises of the world, they just want to break in. That's it. Break in, ransomware. Ransomware, crypto mine. These are the things they want to do right now. Obviously, stealing the data is the new trick before you ransomware. That way, you make people maybe pay the ransomware because you threaten to release the data. So we've seen that as well. And I've also said, some of the people play both sides. Some Georgies are also Borises. They play both sides of the fence. Not only do they create the tools, but they also, sort of use them maliciously. And that's a problem. I always say we don't want the Borises or Georgies with dubious morals. That's when you're creating a crowd sourced, system, then you kind of want that validation process. And this is part and parcel of the problem, isn't it? You're going to have to validate these people. But if you're building scenarios, you just have to validate the scenario. Make sure the scenario is good, as well as the people. We don't want the bad people because you don't want to be paying bad people. But this isn't new, and this kind of validation goes on all the time. So it's not really a problem. In fact, I've always said like the earliest iteration of this is going to be when we create the marketplace and we create the tool servers, and in 13.4 we're building the tool servers. And I'm actually wireframing the marketplace out right now so that we're ready to go once that tool server is validated. I literally could be creating 5 to 10 scenarios a week. This is how easy it's going to be for us. So, and then we'll roll it out maybe to EDUs, maybe to different areas where we can start building up this following. But, there's like lots of following out there. There's lots of crowdsourced people. And I just believe they're not given the platform for their skill sets. I look at the same thing. You want to think, oh, I could join that crowdsource. Then you look at what they're doing. It's like, well, you have to go through this platform, and it's against one. It's not the real world, and that is a problem I have. I want the Georges of the world to create these, and I call them subject matter experts. So George is like a subject matter expert to me. He's a content creator. I want this guy to create content for Red Spy. Now, like I said about the crowdsourcing model currently, it's a mini pen tester to one client. That's good, it's effective. But this is the problem that the subject matter expert has is, I might put all this effort into finding something and someone beat me to the punch. Whereas if I'm building a scenario, I can build quite a complex scenario, and it's now a one pen tester or one subject matter expert, one content creator to multiple clients, because that scenario could be pushed out and sold to multiple clients. And there's ways that we can do this. And obviously, even on the scenario base, there's ways that we can embed certain aspects of this for free anyway. So if I was creating the content, and I'm creating these scenarios and I'm pushing them out to you, and say maybe I created a scenario for Oracle, and it's a straight on exploit scenario, and I just push it out. You might have some keywords in your repository that says, hey, if you see a scenario for Oracle, flag it. And so you might get flagged as a scenario, and you can execute that scenario against your Oracle server. Now, I may never know who downloaded it and run it. That's the difference. There's an air gap. You may want to. You may come back and put comments into the marketplace, give me reviews, those kind of things. But it may be that you say, hey, Darren, that was a fantastic scenario. Let me give you a 5-star. And I can start, you can start to see how you can gamify this. And we'll talk about that in a second, because I think that's important. We can't lose the culture. It's a very much a cultural aspect. Now, how does it, this is like the process. So for me, like I said, George, subject matter expert, apparently a Batman fan. If you can see the screen right now, he's got a little icon of a Batman. He creates the content, builds the scenario and basically it might be one of his tools, it might be a script that he's created, it might be something, say in Cobalt Strike, that he's done specifically clever. It might be something that he's running or he's doing in Metasploit, whatever. He can add that scenario to the marketplace. We take care of integrating that into Red Spy. That scenario now is integrated into the Red Spy ecosystem. Those tools that, like we said, he might have created new tools. Those tools can be added to the local tool server, or we can actually run remote tools via Kubernetes. I'm not going to get into that, but it's pretty exciting stuff. But the idea is George adds the content, or creates the content, adds it to the marketplace. That now is available for everybody to be able to download, purchase. Maybe it's free, execute it. And then the idea is that if you don't have those tools on the system, it can prompt you for it. So the whole process is relatively simple. George creates a scenario, sells it on the marketplace. Via the Red Spy client, you can download and execute that scenario. Dead simple. How is that different from like crowdsourcing right now? Well, one, it's a single pen tester to many client model, because he's created this scenario, he's put a lot of effort into it, and it's now can be purchased amongst every client. There's an air gap. In other words, you might want to remain anonymous and to purchase it. And the end of the day is that you might not want your company known that it has an Oracle server, or you don't want him banging on your production system. But you've got this scenario and you can run it when you want to run it. So it's air gap. It's a single pen tester, single subject matter expert to multi-company. It's holistic. It's not just against your external threat surface. We're not limiting him or her to just, hey, go and test this web application sat out there in the cloud. What we're saying is, like, create scenarios for me. In other words, do what the bad guys are doing right now. That's the key part to this. When you get involved in the real world and not just in the pen test world, you realize that, they're going after Citrix ADC, they're going after Juniper Pulse, they're going after the low-hanging fruit all the time, because that's how they want a ransomware. The difference is you've got to know these issues quicker than the bad guys. So, for instance, I'll give an example. Say a new remote code execution came out on a Cisco router. Automatically, you're going to have these content creators and subject matter experts going to create a scenario. Say, hey, look, this is how I can compromise that system. Now, you might have keyword Cisco, in which case it's going to say, hey, there's a new scenario for Cisco. You may want to look at this. Or the analyst can look at it if you've got the service. And at that point, we can execute that scenario against your Cisco and tell you how that would be effective against you. It's one thing, it's one thing going against static threat surface. So let's take that one step further, and this is where all the others fall down and where we can do it. Say we have a fantastic drive-by. We think to ourselves, great local exploit. There's a fantastic local exploit right now, and if anyone visits a web page with this local exploit kit in there, and they just, by visiting the page, they'll get compromised. So George creates this fantastic scenario that has the web page, that has the tools, that has the exploit, that has everything you need wrapped up in that bundle of a scenario. So you can now execute that scenario. Maybe you want to send a fish out using that scenario to all your internal users. So you're testing exactly what you would see in the real world. We're not limited to what we can do. That is the key part there. The other thing you can do, we can do all what they do. I've always said that I want to gamify this. In other words, say as a client, you want to create a challenge. You might turn around and say, you know what? I've got this really dodgy third-party application that my developers have written. I don't believe it's very good. I want to create a challenge and say, hey, guys, I might award points to it. I might award money to it. I might put a bug bounty on it and just say, hey, Can anyone sort of break into this and actually sort of, start targeting particular areas? It might be a web app that you're developing or something. And so you can start feeding things into it. So you can create these challenges. That's kind of like a bug bounty program. Well, essentially it is a bug bounty program. You're just saying, hey, I've got something that I want someone to particularly pay attention to. You might give a little bit more information about it. You might have some source code, something that we might not see from a traditional testing perspective. So you can create that challenge. Another one is, the subject matter experts, I want to create teams. I want to be able to bundle that up in teams. And also I want to be able to, with the subject matter experts, as they create these contents and as the feedback comes into play, that they can earn points that could be exchanged for rewards. It might be training. It might be sort of certifications. So the idea is that we're taking care of the clients, but we're also taking care of these content creators much better and providing them with a platform much more holistic than what they've got out there right now. And that's kind of where 14.0 sits. So what's the analogy that I always use right now? And I talk about, the App Store and the iPhone. When the iPhone launched, and if you ever go onto YouTube and look at the old iPhone launch, it's quite good. You see Steve Jobs come out there and you see how different it was. I mean, bearing in mind at the time, everybody had those little QWERTY keyboards, Blackberries, typing up on the keys. Some people like them, some people don't. But you saw the vision there that was just like, wow. Now, when the iPhone first launched, it didn't have the App Store. That's the difference. I mean, it's kind of interesting when you look at it. So what I'm trying to create, we've got the iPhone app, which I consider the Red Spy client portal. It does exactly what it says on the tin. It uses and integrates into, best of breed tools, bots and AIs, and basically creates this what I consider a continuous penetration testing service that I think is unrivaled out there right now. The next part we're building on is this App Store, where the scenarios become the apps, and the App Store itself is the marketplace. And we want these content creators to build these apps for us, sell them on the marketplace, the App Store, so that people that have the Red Spy client system that are that are members of the Red Spy community can purchase these scenarios via their Red Spy service. And that's, again, like I said, it's an important concept to understand, because you think about it, I can create apps. That's not a problem. I can create scenarios. But it's the same way that Apple could create its own apps. Imagine if they didn't have the App Store and they just was building apps themselves. They could create lots of apps. Would it be as effective, diverse, and would it have really taken off as much if Apple was the only people that were building their apps? I don't think so. And I think that's why it's important when we talk about Red Spy, and when we start talking about the marketplace and how we build in crowdsourcing, that's the equivalent of being able to get these subject matter experts, these content creators, to literally build the apps for us, these scenarios. And they're going to be, again, super sophisticated because they're not restricted. They're contained within our ecosystem. They're validated within our ecosystem, but we control the ecosystem. That's the important part. It's framework of frameworks, as it were. But it gives us an overall picture that we can start building all these particular scenarios, and not just, hey, rather than crowdsourcing right now is like instead of having one pen tester, we'll have 50 pen testers. I don't think you solve security by adding extra pen testers. I don't. I think you solve security by adding extra scenarios based upon real world tactics, techniques, and procedures, and having those scenarios automatically mapped to your data set. In other words, designed specifically for you, or they can run in your environment. To me, that's the exciting part. So, what's the current problems? I've always said the current bounty program, and if you've seen, there's actually been a decline in that particular area. There was an interesting article I was talking about it, that there's a decline in the current bug bounty program. It's saying it's got issues. Same with crowdsourcing. That hasn't really, they were talking about, it's going to replace this traditional pen test. No, it hasn't. It's still, because there's less ownership of it, of the problem. I think you put it into the crowd, and there's like, nobody found anything. Okay, if nobody found anything and there's a problem that appears, where's the ownership of the problem? So I've always said, the current bug bounty is good for vendors. It's good for you guys, clients, but it's not good for pen testers. And if the balance isn't right, then you're not going to get the right people. That's the problem. It's not real world as well. It really isn't. And there's also they know who you are type aspect. Now, I think there's some companies that do broker, but they're still going to be knowing who you are. And it also does create a lot of noise. We've seen this, when you're testing against a production system, and instead of having sort of one fantastically good scenario, you're having 1,000 pen testers go against it. It creates a lot of noise. They also don't understand the business. There's not that relationship, because, they're often, the one thing I've always said with is we're a community. So my analysts, you have an assigned analyst. There's that relationship that's designed to understand your business. And if they don't tell me, and we'll sort that out. Again, I said, straight from the top, feedback is everything to me. We can change, we can alter, we can do our best. And I know it's not on your backs to do this, but what I'm saying is that you help me when you give me feedback. So that's bug bounty. I think, there's just lots of problems with it. And also, like I said, you might spend 3 months working on something, or a month working on something, only to be beaten to the punch. This is why a lot of, pen testers don't get involved in it. Current crowdsourcing, one is really only against external threat surface, web applications, that kind of thing. I've seen 1 or 2 try and do something internal, but nothing really good. And it's not holistic. You mention phishing to them and they look at you blankly. It's about an end-to-end scenario. When a bad guy launches an attack, it's an end-to-end scenario. So if I'm creating a scenario that I know is, I want a scenario that's going to own a company that's going to be the most effective on the most companies. It's the same way a bad guy works. Whether it be via phishing, drive-by, whether it be by local exploit, remote code execution, whether it be, any other way that they can think of. I don't want to mimic pen testers or pen test methodology to a certain extent. I want scenarios to be able to be free range, come up with their own little tactics. And the current crowdsourcing methodology doesn't work like that. So many testers to one organization doesn't fit the pen tester. We've said you create a pen test or you create a scenario that can be bought by multiple pen testers. Much better. And again, I said usually against the only threat surface. I've always said about the bad actors, there's the guys that create the tools, and there's the guys, so the Georgies, you've got the Georgies, they're the guys that create the tools. Then you have the Borises. These are the ones that have no qualms about attacking you. And you see, the amount of money that some of these guys are earning that are creating tools or creating particular tactics, techniques, and procedures and selling it, and they're not making a great deal of money. But you got to remember, they're not making a great deal of money in compared if they was living in the US. But maybe if they're living in Timbuktu, then in Timbuktu, that $25 for that tool is like a week's or a month's wage. So, and again, I've said not all bad actors are evil. Some just people have a talent for creating remote admin tools, or maybe it's their thing. Maybe they're doing maybe it's something that they enjoy. And that's where you've got to get, and that's where, the holistic, so we've got to get them. And they do get, if you ever look at it, there's a lot of people that get ripped off by bug bounty vendors. In fact, they can get ripped off by the hacker community themselves. And so, there's a problem there. And I truly believe if we can get to the point where we're building these scenarios, I can mimic nation state. I get to the point where I can mimic nation state stuff. Because, imagine you could join a team, you could build complex scenarios, you could sell that complex scenario, get rewarded like you would do if you was going to go and sell that to the bad people, the Borises. So that's an issue there. So, I've always said, not all it's, at the end of the day, it's business, and we've just got to get a better business model. If by choking out the tool sets being created, that we drive up the price of the tools, for the bad actors, the Borises, then that's a win. If we stop the Georgies from becoming Borises, that's a win. But at the end of the day, we're just trying to give that creative content outlet to the Georgies and reward them for that content they created. Better than what's out there right now. So I've always said the solution is to utilize crowdsourcing to build complex and sophisticated scenarios to deliver the most advanced attack emulations via the Red Spy 365 ecosystem. Red Spy becomes the iPhone. The App Store, the content creators build me the apps. And we create this scenario driven, not, just, hey, because, at the end of the day, it's scenario driven, it's intelligence driven, it's what's out there right now, it's real world, and it's not artificially saying, hey, we found a vulnerability in your mobile app that no one really ever uses. The bad guys aren't going to use it to deliver your ransomware. And while you were concentrating on that, Bill clicked on a fish and the local exploit ran and everything got ransomware. All because you're concentrating on something that shouldn't be your worry. It's got to be based on intelligence, got to be based on real world, got to be based on what's happening. So that's kind of like this little show right now. I'm just going to end this show and I'm going to bring up those of you who can't see it, doesn't matter. But I do. This is kind of like where we're at right now. And so from this perspective, we get center it. So this is where we're at here. This is the Red Spy 1332. We're sitting there. There's two client portals here. This is the local tool server. This is 13.4. So we're introducing the local tool server concept, the repository, and the scenario builder. You remember, we already got the scenario builder in here. Everybody probably was wondering, why is there a scenario builder there? Guess what? That was a precursor for all this stuff coming up. So we have this 13. So 13.4 takes care of this particular section, the local tools, everything else. For those that can't see, I'm just showing a basic overview of the infrastructure, and you've probably seen it before, and if you want it, just ask me and I'll send it to you, because this shows you the infrastructure. What we're also going to start to build right now, and you see there's a couple of wireframe examples here, very poorly designed by the way, because I'm not a UI designer, nor am I a graphic designer. Hopefully though you've seen some changes in like the user interface for the clients. But we're getting to this part. This is the marketplace. And the marketplace allows you to build scenarios, or it's going to allow the content creators, the Georges of the world, to build these scenarios and sell them on the marketplace, so that eventually, once the scenario is built, the tools required sit on the tool server, and then you can download it as a scenario when it starts to pop up and say, hey, we've matched some keywords. This scenario is now open to you. That's the ecosystem. That's what we're building right now. This is the future of Red Spy. This is how it maps across. We're not that far off on, I would say 13.4, and I love putting my developers under pressure, probably about 5 to 6 months, because there's a lot going on here. We've added new developers. Adding new developers doesn't always mean that it speeds everything up. There's obviously a bump that goes on. Their job is for integration, maintenance, those kind of things. But 13.4, there's a lot of interesting things there. You've got the landing page editor. There's a whole heap in 13.4. So that's why it's a bigger build. Takes longer. Lots more regression testing, because as it becomes more complex, we've got to do a lot more regression testing. We found that out the hard way. Especially when you've got data already in there. It's easy to do it when it's a clean new one. Dead simple. But some of you guys will attest that when you've got data in there and you're trying to do regression testing, it becomes a little bit more fun, especially when you add new versions. And then obviously we've got the marketplace. This is everything being built, and it's going to be designed, and how the scenario being built. I'm going to zoom in on one part here. Oh look, that looks just like the scenario builder. Rare for a reason. So that's where we're going, and this is being sort of done at the same time. So This is, I've talked about, probably about 6 months for the 5 to 6 months. Just give the developers some due. 5 to 6 months of 13.4. 14.0 introduces the marketplace. That's exciting. Like I said, hopefully I've shown you a little bit about where we're going, why we're doing it, what the problems I think are with the current setup and why it sucks, with crowdsourcing. And, you just go out there, you can look at, current crowdsourcing or current bug bounty. We can do all of that and keep it within our ecosystem, plus be holistic, plus introduce, more tools, different scenarios. There's nothing out there like that right now, which is exciting to me. People say, well, don't you try and keep in the pack? I've never thought like that. I know exactly what we've got to achieve. And, from where we were, 1.0 to where we are now in, coming up, 13.32 we've got. So we've got 13.4 coming up. It's a huge difference, massive. And I think the difference between 13.4 and 14.0, 13.32 and 14.0 is going to be as big a difference as from 1.0 to 13.32. That's how big I believe that the difference is going to be and what it enables me to do and what the crowdsourcing enables us to do, because that's mostly important. So thanks very much for listening. Hopefully everybody keeps quiet. There's a couple of, if you're Cisco, watch out for the new CDP attack tool. Apparently there's big problems in that. There's a lot of new CVEs appearing. Some of them are just weird. They're off on some strange, piece of software that no one uses. Great. But there's also, things like the Cisco stuff. That's massive. Problem in CDP. CDP is kind of antiquated, isn't it, really? But, still know everybody using it. So stay out there. Bear in mind that the biggest attack we're still seeing the growth of ransomware. We're seeing some new ransomware come out. We're also seeing, them hosting in strange websites. I've always told you, Payspin, GitHub, all these kind of, hosting sites. Be very wary of allowing access to, because that's where the bad guys will host their malware as well if you allow it out there and you're not doing web filtering. So thanks very much, and look forward to the next podcast.
Shall we play a game?
We got one person online. The workload is enough for like 10 users. I think we got a hacker.
Shall we play a game?
What are they doing to him? Breaking into his mind. It's like hacking a computer. All it takes is time.
Red alert! All hands to battle stations.
Hello, friend.
Welcome to Red Spy 365.
Shall we play a game?